to welcome everyone this evening, and we're very pleased that you came to join us. And I have a few kind of housekeeping things I want to mention first, and then we'll begin our program. First of all, I would like to thank the Travis Credit Union for allowing us to use this beautiful facility. They were very gracious enough to allow us to come here. And so thank you to Sherry Courtney, the Director of Corporate Relations, Fred Sarkoza, and Viviana Laura, who is here. The community outreach been a big help, and we really appreciate all that you've done to make this possible. So give them a hand of applause. Okay. Secondly, I want to remind you that this is an educational meeting. We all are coming here with different perspectives, different views, and this is a bipartisan organization, or not organization, but meeting. And so please be respectful of everyone's opinions. During the presentation, there'll be actually 3 presenters. Following those presentations, there'll be time for questions and answers. And so I hope that you all will be courteous to one another and allow everyone an opportunity to speak and ask questions and find out what they came here to learn about today. So another thing, we thank Dave and Tammy Edwards from Channel 26 for videotaping this proceeding. And so part of that will be we would ask you to hold your questions until after the presentations, so that the video kind of goes through in a smoother sequence rather than being interrupted by questions. So I think that just about covers that. And if I could ask everyone right now to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening, for the opportunity to gather here together. We ask you to guide us in our learning. Bless us with your Spirit, that we may go forth and make this country an even better land. Amen. Amen. It's now my very great privilege to introduce to you our first presenter, Heather Goss. And she's got a wonderful presentation for you, so enjoy. Thank you.
Just want to make sure I don't have a Marco Rubio moment. Or maybe I just did. Anyway, I want to thank you for inviting me here. This is the 3rd town hall I've done this week on this topic, and I've actually been speaking all over California, parts of Nevada and Arizona about sustainability, because we use the term sustainability every day, and it has come into our lexicon and into our lives a short time ago, and it means different things to different people. And so we need to be clear about what we're talking about, because words mean something. And I'm here to tell you that sustainability for most of us means, to preserve, conserve, have clean energy, take care of our future, take care of our world. I mean, who doesn't want all of these things? But when you start looking at the legislation that's pushing sustainability, it's anything but that, and it is counterproductive to some of those things. So I'm here to talk about what the One Bay Area plan is all about, and how it's affecting our lives, and who's behind it. Where did it come from? This is a 9-county regional plan that's going to affect 101 cities in the Bay Area. This is the first ever regional plan in the Bay Area. There is no such thing as regional government. We have a system of government in place, federal, state, and local, but yet we have a new regional plan that's going to be applied over our local general plans, and it's going to seriously affect our lives. And we didn't vote for this. So where is it coming from? Who's behind it? Because it will it's calling for the social re-engineering of our cities and towns, and there's some drastic changes that are heading our way. Now, this plan is not new. This plan has actually been in the works for almost 2 decades, and I'm going to talk about that because I've done a lot of research into the plan and where it has come from. And I've actually been going to the hearings and reading all of the legislation, SB 375 and AB 32, and a lot of the legislation that's been in place in order to understand what this is all about. I'm a realtor. I care about private property rights. I care about the future of our country, and I care about the future of my town as well. I live in Danville, and I can tell you that this plan is not right for my town, but it's happening there. And I think that the main thing that all of us can agree on is we want local control. We want to decide how our town, our city will grow in the future, not have some unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats deciding that for us. So what does sustainable development mean, and where did it come from? Well, sustainable development, the term, came out of the 1987 Brundtland Commission report called Our Common Future, and it means, or is supposed to mean, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that sounds nice, if only that were true. Now, the term sustainable development was adopted as part of the Agenda 21, Agenda for the 21st Century, at the Earth Summit in Rio in 1992, that was signed on by 178 nations. George Herbert Walker Bush Sr. signed on to it. Now, it is a non-binding treaty. Congress didn't ratify it. But remember that Congress is being bypassed in a lot of ways through executive orders, EPA regulations, and other methods. So the way these principles, even though these principles were adopted and not ratified, they've taken over our society. We have sustainable yogurt now. Now, in 1993, through executive order, Clinton passed 12852, which created the President's Council on Sustainable Development, and that council's job was to make sure that the sustainable development principles outlined in Our Common Future by the Brundtland Commission were injected into every level of our government, and that's pretty prevalent these days. Now, when you look at the 3 circles, consecutive circles, you are looking at the logo for sustainable development. Now, when you see economy, you probably think in terms of good jobs for everyone, free market principles. When they're talking about economy, they're talking about public-private partnerships. Everything is going to public-private partnerships. Big corporations, big government, big labor, and it creates a circular momentum where it's self-fulfilling. Environment, and the environment regulations, EPA regulations, is used as a hammer to stop certain developments, to prevent certain things from happening, or we can give waivers, and that's also something that's happening. Now, equity is the redistribution of wealth. When you think about equity, it's not equal justice, it's social justice. Social justice and environmental justice are one of the principles of sustainable development. Now, in California, sustainable development is everywhere. And international principles, those come from international principles through climate policies, through land use policies. Those are all being adopted into our local general plans. Coming through EPA regulations, international NGOs like ICLEI, the International Council for Local and Environmental Initiatives. Those NGOs are passing policies through our American Planning Association into our regional plans and then to our local plans as well. We're creating a shadow government here. I mean, we have a federal, state, and local system, and it's being usurped. And we're finding that we've got unelected boards, bodies, and commissions that are taking over. At our California, at the state level, we've got unelected bodies like the California Air Resource Board that is completely out of control. Our California Air Resource Board can't even be audited by our legislature. Yet they're making determinations about our lives. Businesses can't function because they can't follow these regulations. Our trucking companies are having a hard time adapting to the regulations for air quality. They're going out of businesses. But small businesses are going out, are leaving the state. Individuals are leaving the state. So, we're creating this whole system where we don't have accountability. At the regional level, we've got COGS, the Council of Governments. In my area, I've got the Association of Bay Area Governments, and so do you. You guys are in the 9 Bay Area counties. And our Metropolitan Transportation Commission, as well as the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, the Bay Area Conservation Development Commission, and a host of others that are making decisions. Power and money and control are being taken to a higher and higher level. Our local city council and our counties are losing control. And that's what I'm trying to appeal to. My city council has given up their control. We incorporated in order to get away from the county, in order to have local control in our cities, only to now give that control up to unelected boards, bodies, and commissions. In addition to that, we have NGOs and stakeholder groups that are also piling on as well. And they have a seat at the table. The Greenbelt Alliance that's targeting properties, the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aware of our environment and conserve, but those entities are taking control. The special interest groups are what are controlling the decisions that are being made at higher and higher levels. Last year, redevelopment, well, I guess it was maybe 2 years ago now, redevelopment was taken away at the local level, only to be given to the state, right? So now we've got infrastructure finance districts or state level redevelopment. The money and the power is coming from higher and higher levels. And when that happens, our local city governments are ceremonial at best. I mean, our cities are really starving for money and having to adopt plans and do things that they probably ordinarily wouldn't do if they had their own choice in decision making at that level. And you, the people, are paying for it. So we need to stop with the regionalism. There was a meeting about 2 weeks ago at the Silicon Valley Venture Group and foundations and some of our state-level legislators and ABAG and MTC in that group of regionalists are calling for the abolition of cities and county boundaries. I don't know if you know that, but they're openly calling for that because they think that there's too many cities and counties getting in the way of making plans. Local control is getting in the way of an overall plan that they have in place for us. Can't see my screen here. Okay, now I can. All right, so the International Council for Local and Environmental Initiatives is an international NGO that puts out a planning guide. And this planning guide is an introduction to sustainable development. This planning guide is used at our local level. These are international policies, building codes, climate change policies that are being injected into our local general plans. Now, there's 3 bills in California that are forcing us down this path. And the 3 bills are AB 32, SB 375, and AB 2785. And AB 32 is our climate bill. It's our Global Warming Act and our Cap and Trade bill. And that was passed in 2006. All of these bills were passed under Arnold Schwarzenegger's watch, okay? So just so you get some perspective. In 2006, the Global Warming Act bill was passed, and it calls for the reduction of greenhouse gases to 1990 levels by the year 2020. Now, as a nation, we are already there, and with the CAFE standards and air and emission standards on cars and trucks, we're well on our way to a reduction in greenhouse gases for much higher levels onward. So, but AB 32 is designed to reduce greenhouse gases. I mean, whether you're for global warming or not for global warming, that's the bill that controls emissions. And the idea was to punish polluters, big corporations or any type of corporation or company polluting, and charge them, either have them upgrade their facilities or buy carbon credits to mitigate the emissions. And they buy carbon credits from the Carbon Credit Trading Bank, okay, or Land Mitigation Bank. And that's the idea behind cap and trade. Now, that's all to save the planet. Now, to save the planet and reduce our greenhouse gases, we need to live in sustainable communities. So that's Bill SB 375, which was passed in 2008. And we're going to take a look at the sustainable communities strategy and what that means, because that's what the One Bay Area plan is all about. So to reduce global warming, we're going to create sustainable communities or human settlements, and that's how we're urbanizing our 9 Bay Area counties with the One Bay Area plan. Outside of those areas, those urbanized areas, will be wildlands and open space corridor systems, and that's through Assembly Bill 2785, which was passed in 2010. And that creates a wildlife corridor system throughout California. I don't know if you know that or not. Now, AB 32, as I said before, governs our greenhouse gas emissions, and the California Air Resource Board is an unelected, unaccountable state-level body that can't be audited, that has incorporated in Delaware, so it doesn't follow the Open Meetings Act, and is handling our cap-and-trade system in California, which has become basically a giant Ponzi scheme, in my opinion. But the reduction of greenhouse gases is what the AB 32 bill calls for, to 1990 levels by the year 2020. And Arnold Schwarzenegger actually signed an executive order in 2005 stating that the state would reduce its carbon emissions by 80% below 1990 levels in the year 2050. Now, I called the California Air Resource Board and I asked them if that was possible. And then the guy on the phone said, well, I don't think so unless we completely re-engineer our lives and get out of our cars. Because at the level at which they're calculating the 1990 emissions at 127 million metric tons, to go 80% below that would actually take us back to 1930 levels of lifestyle. So it's quite a drastic change in our life that what we're headed towards if we stay on this path. There's no actual mandate for a carbon credit trading scheme in the AB 32 bill. There's no mandate for local cities to create a climate action plan. This is all voluntary. But that's the direction that we're headed in. And the open space and wildlands that are being created, when we buy up those ridge lines, when we create the wildlife easements and the wetlands, those are actually going into land trusts being used in the carbon credit trading scheme. Now, AB 2785 works with AB 32. All of these bills work together. You've got to connect the dots. See, it's like when you're looking at a picture and you see dots and you don't know what the picture is until you start connecting. And when you step back and you've connected enough dots, you can actually see what the picture is. All of these bills work together to form a picture. So the picture, what is the picture? The picture is changing our way of life in the future. To reduce global warming, or reduce greenhouse gases, we want to get out of our cars. I mean, this is the ideology. Get out of our cars. We want to create high-density housing next to mass transit, and everything else will be open space. And that's basically what the plan is. These bills force us down that path. We're the only state that has state-level legislation that's forcing us to do this. AB 2785, as I said, is the California Wildlands, and that was passed in 2010, and you can see that this is a Caltrans, Department of Transportation, and Department of Fish and Game wildlands map project. And the idea is they want to create underpasses and overpasses throughout California so that wildlife can roam free, unfettered. I suppose wildlife know how to find an underpass and overpass. I guess we'll have to also make sure that we have signs for them, because they must be able to read as well. So this is part of this wildlands map is part of a 313-page document. It can be found on the DFG website at dfg.ca.gov/habcon/connectivity. I highly recommend that you go check out this report, because this is part of a 313-page report, and what you are looking at in I have the map in the lobby that you can look at, but what you're looking at is a map of, in my opinion, the taking of private property. Because in order to create this wildlands map, corridor system, if you will, and have this corridor system throughout California, private property needs to be taken. The green areas are the major habitat blocks that they've identified as being the core areas for wildlife. Those will be off limits. The yellow and red areas will be the areas that are connecting those big core blocks. Those are the corridor systems. And then you've probably heard that wildlife like they're trying to reintroduce the wolf. Okay, where the wolf and the bear go, your private property rights go away. And that's part of this process. So go look at this map. Go talk to your transportation authority, your metropolitan planning organization. They're all using this map. The Department of Fish and Game, the transportation authorities, all of them are supposed to be using this map in planning, yet they're not telling the people of California that this map is being built. So the next time you think we need to preserve that ridgeline or we need some more open space, think in terms of you're helping to create this map. When we put private property, or when we place private property outside of urban growth boundaries, when we place it in conservation easements, we are basically diminishing the value of that property for the person that owns it and restricting their rights. It may be nice to think about the fact that we want open space, and when we should have some open space. We have lots of public land in California. Over 50% of California is already owned by the government. If you're in Arizona, 87% is owned by the government. In Nevada, almost 95% is owned by the government. Half of the western United States is mostly open space. Now, land use regulations and regulatory takings are occurring, and eminent domain is one of the ways that land can be taken, and that's an obvious method of taking, and it can be taken based on the Kelo decision in order to gain higher tax revenue for public use or for private use. But conservation easements are the big one now, because instead of eminent domaining a property, conservation easements have become very popular, especially to set aside land as part of the wild land. So when you're setting aside, the government is buying up conservation easements, or a land trust is paying for a conservation easement, they're basically putting that land into a virtual bank, a land bank. It's a portfolio that can be used as part of the carbon credit trading scheme. This is not about the environment, folks. This is not about little animals and worry about how they're going to get around our state. They're going to figure that out, okay, without us creating this map. The point is that we're making that land unavailable, and it becomes part of those banks. Now, we also have a shrinking urban growth boundary and urban limit line way of regulatory taking, because when we shrink the urban limit lines and urban growth boundaries, anyone outside of those limit lines, their property values are diminished, okay? Because they're restricted in what they can do. And this, again, is just forcing us into a more compact development. We're conditioned now to think that urban sprawl, that horizontal sprawl is bad, but vertical sprawl is good, right? I mean, that's really all we've done, is traded the method or the way that we're developing from horizontal to vertical. Development is still happening. Now, development fees are also a method that are used to encourage or discourage development. So if we don't want development to be done in a certain place, then we can use higher development fees. And of course, in urban areas, when we're seeing high density housing being built everywhere, the developers are getting fees waived and encouraged to develop that type of housing. Habitat plans are also used to discourage development. And CEQA, and environmental impact studies. CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act, and that was designed to help us protect our environment so we mitigate our impacts on development. Well, if high-density housing and transit and whatever is preferred development is being done, those types of developments will get waivers. It's called streamlining. It's just a fancy term for saying we're going to let you build it and we'll give you waivers. So like I said, outside of the urban areas, we're going to have our open space. Inside, we're going to have sustainable communities, which is where we link our land use to transportation. This is what the One Bay Area Plan is all about. High-density housing next to mass transit. The definition in SB 375 of a sustainable community is a high-density, compact, minimum 20 unit per acre development next to mass transit, within a half mile of transit or a major transit hub. So unless you're town is within a half mile of transit or transit hub, then you're not considered a priority development area or eligible really to be a sustainable community. Because the whole point is to get you out of your cars and you riding transit to reduce greenhouse gases. I mean, that's the idea behind it. Like I said, the developers are going to get waivers if this is a preferred development type, and that's what sustainable communities is all about. So GHG waivers are given. There's no need to have them do greenhouse gas emissions for light trucks and cars, as long as it meets that specific model. There's $277 billion at stake. It's being handed down in by the federal government to the One Bay Area program through ABAG. And then ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, is doling out money to the transit authority. So the Solano Transit Authority is going to be given a big chunk of money in order to make sure that the cities comply. Now, this is all voluntary, okay? This is all voluntary. The cities don't have to comply, but if they don't, they're not going to get their transit funds. So, I mean, that's basically how they frame it. Well, nobody has to do anything. Well, yeah, but if we don't adopt this, then we're going to miss out on these transit funds. So it becomes a vicious cycle. Okay, here's a video of what they tell you. This is what they want you to think it is. Of Bay Area Governments. Now, when you go to their meetings, and I've gone to a lot over the last few years, you know, it's all rigged. All of these decisions have already been made. They will tell you, oh, we're just following a mandate from the state. You know, don't come yell at us. If you don't like this going down, go talk to Senator DeSaulnier or whoever your state level representative is, because they're the ones that passed the bill, and we're just following a mandate. Well, that's not exactly true. This has been going on for a long time. They were all in on it and behind it. In fact, this in 2007, before this legislation, SB 375, was passed, here's one of their propaganda pieces that says, "A place to call home, housing in the San Francisco Bay Area." So there's already a vision, but it goes way back even before then. But this is the type of housing that's going up everywhere. Now, I'm not against high-density housing. If people want to live this way, I'm a realtor. I will help you go find that home for you. You know, but I'm just saying that everybody should have a choice. You are living where you're living because you want to be there, not because somebody's forcing you to be there, not because somebody's made that decision for you. If you want to live in this type of housing, there's plenty of places to go do that. Now, this is also a piece of information that I found off of their website, and as you can see over here, in 1996, the President's Council on Sustainable Development presented this initiative to the ADAG General Assembly. That's almost 2 decades ago. Remember, the President's Council on Sustainable Development was created in 1993. They presented this to the ADAG Council, and in 1997, ADAG and a bunch of NGOs in the Bay Area, with the Sierra Club, Greenbelt Alliance, Urban Habitat, etc., created a compact. They signed a compact in 1997 to create a Sustainable Bay Area Alliance. And they worked on this and had workshops and secret meetings and whatever, pushing this agenda for a One Bay Area plan. They adopted the United Nations definition of sustainable development. This is off of their website in the documentation. And they adopted the 3 E's, the environment, equity, and economy, from sustainable development. So they're using United Nations principles, and they've embraced those principles, and that's what this document is all about, and this plan. Now, the Bay Area was selected as a pilot program across the country. There was one of 4 areas. Atlanta, Denver, and Chicago were the other areas. It also says in the documentation that the Bay Area Alliance operates within an international context, and they use and follow the Earth Charter, with 16 principles of the Earth Charter. Also in 1999, the regional blueprint for a sustainable Bay Area was created by David Early of Urban Ecology. This is in 1999. And David Early founded DCE Planning Center, and DCE Planning Center is doing my general plan, environmental impact report, and sustainable action plan for my town. So the guy that wrote the blueprint for the One Bay Area plan in 1999, before any legislation, is now making almost $500,000 making sure that that plan is implemented in my general plan in my town, and maybe being done at yours as well. Not a bad gig if you can get it. So what does this all mean to us? This means that our towns are being transformed into high density, minimum 20 unit per acres, stack and pack housing everywhere. Whether we have a transit center or not doesn't really matter. They're pushing for development. This isn't about the environment. We're being told it's about the environment. We're being told that we need to get out of our cars. And in order to do that, we need to create transit, and we need to live near transit. My town is 7 miles to the nearest BART station. I don't live anywhere near transit. So the fact is, my town adding more high-density housing is simply going to create more greenhouse gases, more pollution, more traffic, and there's no provision in this plan for what that's going to do to fire, safety, our schools. Who's going to pay for all of that? You are. We as taxpayers are paying for all of this. Now, what happens in these priority development areas, as you see here, is they focus, and I like they use the term focus programs, because this is where they're focusing the development. You want to know where the development is going to occur in your town? Go look up a PDA, Priority Development Area. That is the target area on your town. Now, in order for a city to get some of this One Bay Area grant money, they have to create a priority development area and actually apply for it through the ABAG Association. And like I said, sustainable communities are within a half mile of a major transit hub, or provide at least a transit access, minimum, I think, 30-minute bus intervals. That's basically the definition of a PDA. I believe Dixon, or one of the areas here, at least, is a rural, what they're calling a rural PDA. I mean, that's a total contradiction, because it's not a transit area. My town actually had to get an exemption because we're not a transit area either. Which means that my city went in and basically begged to be part of this program. So, and when you take the money, it comes with strings. When you take the priority development money, you are now putting a target on your town, and every 8 years you will have to find areas within your town that you can create and rezone areas for high density housing in order to accommodate more and more units, because there are allocations that are being given to our towns. And these regional housing allocations every 8 years include, it's called affordable housing. There's very low income, moderate, etc. But basically every town is being forced to take on more and more. And the towns that are providing PDAs are going to get most of these allocations and money, and this is where they're focusing it. Those of us that live outside of the priority development area, what if you live right outside the PDA? What's going to happen to your property values? That's outside of the PDAs. There's not going to be much development going on, and you're also going to have. You may not know that you're going to have high density housing right next to you. Did you know that when you bought the property? Did somebody tell you that? Probably not. Here's another example of that same PDA, just without all of the colors. All of the PDAs for the different towns are outside in the lobby. You can go and check those out. We'll have our next speaker is going to be talking more about the priority development areas. Here's a map that shows you all of the PDAs within the county. Okay. So it gives you an idea where they're located. There's Vacaville up here, a couple over here. Susan, Fairfield, and just basically shows you that these are target areas for development. Now the developers will get bonuses for higher densities, so it's minimum 20 units per acre. They will get bonuses for higher densities, lower incomes. They will get CEQA waivers. So as long as they meet those minimum criteria that I just defined, they'll get waivers for greenhouse gas emissions and environmental impact studies. So either it's about the environment or it's not. And apparently it's not. They also can violate city ordinances in terms of height limitations, setbacks, and parking. If they do meet the minimum requirements, they can choose, the developers, to actually have higher limits than the town ordinance allows. And some of the cities don't realize that. Now this shows you the ABAG projections. Okay, the Association of Bay Area Government is projecting with flawed numbers the population growth and job growth for our cities and counties. And you know, if anybody who's living in California knows that we're hemorrhaging jobs. We're hemorrhaging people. People are leaving our state. We're in negative growth. We have been for a while. And I can tell you as a realtor, you know, I have people calling me all the time saying, I'm done here, I'm leaving, sell my house. And so, you know, the fact that ABAG is projecting a 10% growth, okay, is flawed. And they get their numbers they're supposed to get their numbers for growth projections from the Department of Finance, which is at 5%, so 50% less. They know they're using flawed numbers for these allocations that they're forcing on the towns, but they won't reduce them. And the cities are fighting back. They're asking for cities to take unreasonable amounts of units, and trying to find an area in order to place those is going to be difficult. Every 8 years, we're going to be required to take even more. So we're asking people to fight back. Corte Madera got out of ABAG, and their numbers dropped dramatically. So 5 things to get your city to do or think about doing. Remove the PDA designation from your town. Take that target off of your town. Don't take the money. Decide where you want to grow and how your town is going to grow. You don't have to have a PDA on your town. None of this is required. The only thing that is required is that you accept a RENA allocation, but the RENA allocation can be negotiated, and we all need to push back on that. Cancel your membership with ABAG. It's a voluntary organization. I say cancel it because they have morphed into a very powerful organization that is dictating to our local cities and holding the money and transportation funds hostage if our cities don't comply. We don't need unelected regional boards and bodies controlling our lives. And once we give into this, we're going to be done. And like I said, in June is when they will create and adopt the regional plan. And so now is the time to step back. Remove all the sustainable community strategy language and specifications from your general plan, your environmental impact report, and your sustainable action plan. I'm asking my city council not to, we're in our general plan update process, and we're saying, please don't put language from a regional plan that has never existed, doesn't exist, hasn't been adopted, hasn't gone through an EIR process, and won't be adopted until June or July. Why are you putting that language into a general plan for 20 years and binding the local citizens to it when it hasn't been tested and it's not even, doesn't exist? It makes no sense. Wait this thing out. And then challenge the RENA allocations. Like I said, there's a discrepancy between the Department of Finance and the ABAG numbers. There's a 50% discrepancy. They're supposed to actually reconcile that by the statute, but they're not. And then get rid of anything that is voluntary, because anytime the whole point with these climate action plans and sustainable action plans, everything starts out voluntary, and then before you know it, you've got more and more restrictions on your liberties, your freedoms, and your private property rights. So I thank you very much for having me here and giving you an overview of what's going on. And I'll turn this over to the next speaker. I'd be happy to answer more questions. There's so much more to this. It's a very complex issue. But I thank you so much for your time and consideration. And thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. My name is Gary Ranefeld. I'm a citizen of Dixon, and my little tiny part of this is just to illustrate what we have been trying to do on a local level and what might happen to your community. Probably already has. If you're not aware of this, it's probably already happened, and you just have missed it. Basically, what is a PDA? Just a brief history, and why you should be aware of what your community leaders are doing on your behalf, with or without your knowledge. Basically, the message here is to know what's going on, and then maybe the importance of showing up. If you know about things and you don't show up and participate, it's going to happen with or without you. But in some cases, but if you're not there, you have no chance to change anything. I'm going to skip through this because Heather briefly talked about this. AB 32 is really one of the foundation's greenhouse gas emissions, including cars and trucks. That was sort of the key thing about this. SB 375, this middle, the second bullet point, links the allocations in land use planning, which is housing, to transportation, with the whole idea of reducing greenhouse gases. So that linkage is what we're talking about with these PDAs. So a priority development area is originally was identified as locally identified, again voluntary. The communities apply for these things. Infill development opportunity areas near transit. ABAG, Association of Bay Area Governments, first adopted the first round of PDAs in 07, and then another round in 08. Now, the original PDAs were planned around large transit for the most part. There may have been some exceptions, but we're talking about BART, Caltrain, light rail, regional buses, that kind of thing, where you had a lot of people, high density areas around transit. Now, this is the latest information I have, which is not very recent. January 2010 is what's on the ABAG website. Heather may have more recent information, but by January of 2010, there were well over 100 of these PDAs in the Bay Area, the nine-county Bay Area, covering about 115,000 acres. Now, in, I guess, over 100 of these things, and I think it's the numbers were getting closer to the 200 level as time went on. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think in order to encompass more and more and more of the Bay Area, ABAG came up with an entirely new program, still calling it PDAs, but they were called Rural Town Center and Rural Corridor, among others, and they were added to bring in these small areas like Dixon. Now, by early February of 2012, the application deadline, over 50 additional PDAs of this small type, I think there were 55 if I remember the numbers, were submitted for these rural areas, including Dixon's application for a 130-acre PDA in its Old Town area. Now, Heather's already alluded to this. What's in it for Dixon? In one word, money. Redevelopment is gone, sort of, and this is the source of money for a lot of what goes on in cities these days. I guess we have the same problem here. Without this PDA designation, Dixon may compete only for unrestricted funds for street and road maintenance. This is the example that was used in the application. Potentially they're excluded then from a large portion of the total Solano County money. But with the PDA, they're eligible also for both unrestricted and restricted funds for street and road maintenance within this PDA area. In our staff report to the City Council, this was suggested that this would double the amount of money that Dixon would have available to it compared to not having this PDA. So the lure is money, and ABAG, it says this is a voluntary program, and in the sense you can resign from ABAG. ABAG is not mandatory. We send our representatives to ABAG voluntarily, but you can answer for yourselves whether this is a carrot or a stick approach. If you don't join and you don't participate, you don't get the money. Okay, transit is the key, at least in the paperwork, around the housing is going to be around this central transit location. This is a picture that I took of Dixon's, I'll call it so-called train station. It happens to be along the Union Pacific tracks that have gone through Dixon for many, many years. I purposely took this picture from the view of the empty parking lot because this is noon in a typical weekday. This was constructed in 2007. It has never been used for any transit function. It was using all kind of money coming in from state and federal, the free money. And there are 3 cars in that parking lot, I believe, and I think that's an unusually high number. The Chamber of Commerce is, I really have nothing against the Chamber, but it was offered to the Chamber of Commerce to lease this particular facility for their use before the building was actually completed. And they lease it for $1 a month, and we're now going on a 10-year lease. So at the end of 10 years, Dixon will have collected $120 for this something like $2 million structure, and Dixon is responsible for paying most of that cost of maintenance on the building. So, but the PDA revolves around this transit center. I mean, this is right in the middle of the PDA and is what is to be the transit center. We have no hope at this point, in a couple of decades at least, of ever having a train stop there. Regional buses have never stopped at this station. There was a bus shelter, it was vandalized. There are electric car chargers that have now been vandalized. So basically we have a nice fancy building for use by a local business. Now this is the PDA timeline, just real briefly, just to give you an idea of why showing up is perhaps important. September 2011, ABAG creates these rural PDAs. September. By December the 16th, Dixon was to submit all these little rural communities. Now this is the new rural category. Their application to ABAG, and it was done in Dixon without any public or planning commission input. This was strictly the staff working with the city officials and submitted this application. Now, specifically excluded was a group in Dixon that is calling themselves the Dixon Old Town Neighbors Group, they have been meeting with and had requested being involved with any land use planning decision in Dixon for, I think, since 2009 at least, and were not informed of this decision either. Now, I've highlighted the next two dates for a reason. January the 24th, the Dixon Council approves the submission of the PDA by resolution. This is one of the requirements of ABAG. The application would come, they would look it over, be maybe a little back and forth to determine whether they met all the requirements. But the City Council had to approve the resolution, by resolution, this submission of this PDA. Notice 6 days later, all these applications had to be turned into ABAG in support of the PDA. So if citizens wanted to speak, it was sometime in this 6-day period. If you weren't at the 24th council meeting, that was basically the end of your input to the Dixon City Council. So ABAG, the Regional Planning Committee of ABAG in Oakland had a meeting on March the 12th to consider these 55 rural PDAs. The committee themselves heard from the public. There were 6 members that I believe went from Dixon. At least 3 of them spoke to the committee. And this is a big committee. There were 24, 25 people there. I don't remember. And then there were citizens from other communities that also went to this ABAG Regional Planning Committee meeting and spoke. Generally there were a few in support, but most of them were opposed because of the lack of public input, the haste with which this whole thing was put together, and the approval process. The committee complained during the hearing that they had received no background information. Actually, the applications were not even present. All they had was a staff report that recommended approving 55 PDAs. So they complained about not having any background material to make a decision. And then the confusion of the goals of what the priority development area is with the word rural. I mean, if at the very least there was a confusion in their minds of what we really were trying to accomplish with priority development area in rural areas. Dixon is not the smallest place that was being considered. I think Montera Beach had a rural PDA, and there are a couple other ones that are just that graphic. Half the commissioners on this group, of course, it's 9-county Bay Area, didn't even know where Dixon was. As a result of the citizen input, the committee recommending deferring all 55 of these PDAs until at least June, which was about 3 months away, so they could consider it further. So at that point, I think the citizens that were against this from Dixon and the others were feeling at least that we had accomplished something. However, March the 15th, 3 days later, the executive board of ABAG met, and essentially based on testimony given to it by, among others, the Dixon mayor and a Dixon developer and Benicia officials, excluded those 2 PDAs from this group of 55, allowed them to proceed quickly. The other 53 were allowed to be continued, tabled until June. So whether that's punishment for as many people showing up from Dixon or not, but that'll give you the idea of if you're not paying attention. I was not at that second meeting on March the 15th. Again, the importance of showing up, it's worth thinking about. On September the 18th of 2012, now just compare that to the date here of going back a couple slides, September of 2011. So almost a year later, the Community Development Director in Dixon informed the Planning Commission in Dixon of this PDA designation officially with a report. This is almost a year following the creation of these rural PDAs, many months since the council passed a resolution to approve it. It makes me question why we even have a planning commission, and this is what's passing for planning these days. The money is out there. The people that want to bring the money into Dixon or any other city for that matter, no worry about the consequences, do so, and then all the rest of the people fall in place. So if I were on that planning commission, I would have, I think I would have protested that we weren't involved many months before. Now, this is not the beginning. It's just another method for regional government to influence local planning with free money as the prize. I just did some math here, and I'm actually mixing numbers here, but the figure I've heard fairly recently that the cost for this one Bay Area plan is $270 billion with a B. There are 7 million something people in the Bay Area now. By 2035 it'll go to 9 million. So depending on the figure you use, let's use the larger population figure, that's $30,000 for every man, woman, and child in the Bay Area. If you use the current figure of 7 million, it's more like 40,000. The last time I looked, and it's hard to keep up with the federal national debt, I think my share of the federal debt was only $50,000. So we're spending that kind of money on one Bay Area for all of these things that we've all been talking about. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Ackerman. I was, until recently, I served on the Fairfield Planning Commission, where I saw some of this happen firsthand. And, well, you know, I lived in Fairfield. I lived in a subdivision, and I didn't want to live that way anymore. I wanted my own space, so we moved out to Vacaville, and you know, I had to resign. But not everybody, you know, there's not a cookie-cutter approach for housing for all of us. We live where we want to. We shouldn't have the government telling us where we want to live, but that's where it's coming to. I noticed that we had a couple elected officials show up today. They want to identify themselves and raise their hand.
I'm County Supervisor Skip Thompson. Jerry Castagnone, City of Dixon.
Tom Boat, City of Dixon, Councilman.
Angela Weisinger, Travis Unified School Board President.
These are some of the people that obviously seem to be interested in this stuff. There's a whole lot more. There's a city council for every city. There's planning commissions. There's the board of supervisors. They all need to hear your input. Does anybody really know who runs our cities and our county?
Not anymore.
Is it our board of supervisors? Is it our city council members? Well, actually, I think it's more local than that. It's our staff. It's the city staff. It's the county staff. They come forward with recommendations to our elected officials, and if we don't show up to give an opposing view, more often than not, it gets passed. The staff, and I don't blame them because they're trying to do their job, but they're looking out what's best for the city. Getting that grant money that is going to tie the city into these plans that aren't actually good for the city, and they go forward with that recommendation to take the money because the city's budgets and the county budgets have been cut. The state is just robbing them blind, and they think they need the money anyhow. We need to show up. We need to give opposing views to our elected officials so they can make an informed choice. It's not their fault. Well, I don't blame them anyhow for making the wrong choice if they're not given all the information that they need. You know, when I was on the planning commission, I was asked. We were asked to vote on whether we should join this one plan or not. And to me, I made the faux pas and I asked, well, isn't this really kind of a form of blackmail? Oops. The staffer said, yeah, well, we don't like to call it that. They know what's going on. Showing up can make a difference. You know, we have a number of unelected boards and commissions and so forth, the STA, ABAG, CARB, the BCDC, Fairfield Sassoon Sewer Board. Some of them are staffed with elected officials, but the officials aren't elected to that board. A few years ago, the STA wanted to stick us with a vehicle license fee. They want to tax us more for having vehicles. Enough of us showed up that we got it canceled. They didn't go forward with it. Same thing happened with the sewer board, where the sewer board wanted to, the staff of the sewer board wanted to implement automatic increases. Whether the sewer board needed, the sewer district needed it or not, let's increase our how much it costs for sewer. Enough of us showed up, along with a couple of the sewer board members, that it got shot down. We can make a difference. The city, and it's not just fees. The city of Fairfield wanted to change the sign ordinance. They wanted to update it. It's a terrible ordinance as it sits today. The staff wrote up a new ordinance that, in my view, was pretty unconstitutional on the First Amendment. We showed up, we spoke out against it, and it shot down. Well, and they still have the same ordinance they've had. So maybe we did the right thing. Pretty sure we did, because the current one is better than what they were proposing. So what do we do? We're all here. This is a good first step. We're being educated. But what do we do in the future? We have to show up to the meetings. You have to speak out. Showing up and sitting in the audience is not enough. You have to show up. You have to be educated, better educated sometimes than our elected officials, so you can give them the opposing view that they're not getting potentially from the staff members, because the staff members want that money. They feel they need that money to make the cities and the counties function. But long term, it's a lie. They're going down a rabbit hole. And to take that money just means they're going to have to take more money and more money. And the elected officials are giving away their control that they were elected to have. Did you know that in Solano County, the city councils have given up eminent domain rights to the Solano Transportation Authority? Why should some unelected body be able to declare eminent domain on a property inside a city limit? That should be a city council function, not some unelected board. But if we don't hold our elected officials to it, they keep giving it away, either through voting to give it away or accepting money that takes it away from them. And then I hear them say, well, we're losing local control. And sorry, guys, that you're elected officials, but sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees. We have to keep control local as much as possible, or your jobs are pointless, and we're all screwed. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to know about your dam bill, because I heard a lot about it. What are you guys doing to be able to stop all this?
Well, we are flyering our neighborhoods. We are taking out full-page ads in our local paper. We are sending out robocalls. 300 to 350 people are showing up at planning commission meetings. And overwhelmingly, the people are against this. It doesn't matter whether you are left or right. This is about right and wrong. And, it's about what you want for your town. And so there's a handful of people that want to go along with this plan, and most of them that have spoken out are from the Forest Service or from a NGO or something that has shown up at our town to say they love this plan. But hundreds and hundreds of people on both sides are fighting together because it's just not for our town. And the thing is getting the word out, because look, 300 people showing up at a planning meeting is a lot, But, it's still, they still voted, the planning commission got tired of us after, 5, 6 meetings in 4 or 5 months. They're ready, they pushed it on to the city council, and now the battle's there. And we're planning on referending our general plan if they vote it through, and then we're planning on launching a recall. And another thing that we do is we hold our own town halls. So, we've been going to the city's town meetings, and they get to say their piece, and we get to sit there for 3.5 hours and listen to them speak, and then we get our 3 minutes. And it's very tiring. So what we decided to do was start hosting our own town halls, like this, where we could speak out and say what we're concerned about. And it's been very effective getting our fellow citizens out and involved and engaged in the process. In fact, our city council now attends our town halls, and our city manager, they were there. I held one last night, so I'm a little bit tired because it's the 3rd town hall I've done this week. But our city council showed up, and our city town manager. And actually, it was really good that they show up because, people need to be informed. If the One Bay Area plan is so great, why didn't anybody know about it? Why weren't we all told? This is a plan that's going to change the lives of 9 million people over the next, 30 years. And I think that everybody in this Bay Area should know what One Bay Area is, how it's going to affect their lives, and should have gotten a vote. That's how I feel about it. So in my town, my goal is to make sure everyone in my town knows what a PDA is, knows, and has an opinion. I don't care if they want it or they don't want it. I just want them informed enough so that they feel like they've had, a say in what's going on. Somebody else? Yes, sir.
My question is for my county supervisor over here. Do you know about our concerns at all? Do you know, this is your first time you're confronted with what we're doing?
No, I was aware of this, Agenda 21 last year when I was in my campaign. Brought to my attention by a colleague and some of the folks from the association. So
are you kind of following up here and speak to the rest of the county supervisors to kind of slow this down a little bit? Try to stand up for people who elected you instead of somebody that wants you to do something?
Well, I'll certainly share my opinion, which I had over the last couple of months. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't have any problem.
The last ATAC meeting I went to, right in front of the county building, the little veterans hall, not one elected official was there. The audience was double this. Where are they at? Well, they're over there. We're there. We want you to be there because the people who we're talking to are NGOs who don't have to do anything we say. If they can't get fired, they don't have to follow up on anything. We had nobody there that has our side that we elected to support us. So whenever there's a meeting with an NGO anywhere, I would prefer that my county supervisors are there, my city planners are there, and the mayors are there. So we have
The One Bay Area meetings, they were several rounds of workshops over the last 2 years that I attended, and hundreds of people attended who were concerned enough to figure out and learn about the meetings and show up. And what we encountered were kabuki theater meetings that were led by paid facilitators. The decisions have already been made. As I showed you, this has been going on for almost 20 years. This compact was formed in 1997, and the plans were laid back then. And so by the time the legislation with SB 375 in 2010 or 2008 was passed, that was simply the green light for them to go public with the general public and say this is a sustainable community strategy, and then open it up for the general public, because at that point in time everything was pretty much done with a closed group of NGOs and stakeholder groups. So that's where we're at. And the only way to get rid of this is really to repeal SB 375. That's not going to happen at this point in time unless the public is awake and aware, because again, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, nobody wants to be told how and where they're going to live and how their town is going to grow. And so that's really what this is all about, is local control. Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of the things I'm worried about is it gets back to the employees. And I was in West Sacramento, I was helping a friend of mine, and she'd gotten fired under really nefarious situations. And I'm just aware of this book. It's called The Federal Register. And it's just, it's a massive thing. It's put out every year. And it's all these grants that these cities and counties can get. And they implement these things, a lot of things that we would never put in if it was put to us to vote for, and they get cash for it. And it's, and I'll apologize. If there's a city employee in here, I apologize. But it's these city employees who sit down and go through these grant registers that look for programs like what you're talking about, and they have the direct access to our city council members, and they're, we're not even really in the process of being informed by them ourselves.
Well, we've created our own monsters, okay? We've created our own shadow government because we create these joint power authorities with Solano Transit Authority, we create ABAG, we create all these boards, bodies, and commissions. Then we get on these boards, bodies, and commissions, and basically we fight over the money, so we're fighting amongst ourselves. We're creating our own demise, our town council, is in the same position most of the town councils are in. They have no more redevelopment anymore. The money and funding is coming from the top. The federal government is giving billions of dollars in federal grant money. AB 32 money is going to be flowing down. Infrastructure fine. Everything's coming from the top down now, which is by design, because the power and control is being shifted to a higher and higher level. And the call for regionalism is really what we're fighting regionalism right now. And it's very difficult once you create the monster to get rid of it, and try to convince your council that they need to get out of ABAG and get out of abolish the transit authorities, that, all these bodies that they've created, because, they consider, well, if we're not at the table, then we're the meal. And I contend there shouldn't be a table. You're already the meal. Now we're just fighting over the little pieces of what's left. And so it's a very difficult situation that we're in. I mean, in Contra Costa County, we passed a half-cent sales tax through Measure J for our roads and transportation, and we gave that money to our transit authority, and now our transit authority is threatening to withhold our return to source funds if we don't comply with the same regulations. I mean, it just doesn't end. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions, one for you and one for Gary. I see planning commissions as a major problem. In our town, there's no training. So they're really put in a very difficult situation because there's lots of laws and regulations. It's hard to understand. So they basically rely on the community development director, who is retired, who works 18 hours a week, is not going to be there that long. And he, I think, just wants the money. So how do you educate your planning commissions?
When I was on the planning commission, having more than the applicant show up was unheard of. That's your fault. That's not the planning commission's fault. You need to show up.
We're there.
Well, maybe not you, but we as a whole. We need to show up at the planning commission, because if you can stop it at the planning commission, better yet, apply to be appointed to the planning commission. Become part of the process so you can stop it in its tracks. That's what I did. Tried to do. I wasn't very, it's hard, but you don't have to spend money to run to get on a planning commission. You get to know your elected officials, and you impress them with what you know. You're absolutely correct that a lot of them are uneducated, and I did get to go to some education. And you know what they educated us on? Sustainable development.
Like that.
And that was the whole planning process. When you get a degree in planning these days, its major focus is sustainable development. They take our tax money and it gets shot up to the state or the feds, and then they give it back to us, but only if we do what they want us to do. They're stealing our money and screwing us with it, basically.
ABAG salaries, there are 85 planners at the regional ABAG board, and they make over $11 million a year. MTC, I don't know exactly how many employees are in the Metropolitan Transit Commission, but I think it's $26 million per year. And we, as taxpayers, fund both sides of their pension plan. So they are that's 85 planners and a regional body that want to keep their jobs. What do? They plan. They're going to plan our lives for us, and they know better. And they are also spending almost $200 million purchasing a brand new building in San Francisco so that they can now go there. That's part of our bridge toll money. Yes, sir.
First, I'd like to state that, I appreciate the connecting of the dots, because that has caused a lot of the decisions I've made into question now. I knew you'd get a kick out of that. But now that they have taken the redevelopment money away from us, basically, to a degree, gutting our pocket, and putting us into a position of the only way you're really going to get the money is by going through this. And as I can see, as time goes on, it's going to tighten up harder and harder and harder on us for us to get any type of grant money that they don't have total control over what we're going to do with it. That causes a lot of concern. But the other, point I want to make is people are also going to have to understand it's a double hit effect either way you go. So in the long run, you see the damage that can be caused by sticking along with the program as they've laid out, which is far more detrimental than a long-term effect of getting out of them. But on the short-term effect, people are going to have to come to an understanding too, is when projects aren't being done and infrastructure is beginning to deteriorate while we try to make up these funds other ways, they're going to have to show patience and understand, well, that is the reason we're going the direction we're going, is because we want to avoid these long-term effects of sticking with this sustainable economy or community as being laid out. And I see difficult times coming ahead of us either way we go. I personally would rather get rid of them, because I'm also seeing the way that our control is actually being taken away from us when you start reading the staff reports on how they're dictating the way you're going to get this grant and what you're going to do and what you're going to have to do with it and how it's being mandated. And I'm also glad to know that we do actually have a choice to get out of it. Thank you.
I assume you're an elected official?
Yes, I'm Tom Bug, Dixon City Council.
Okay, vote for him. I really appreciate your courage. I mean, I think people are wanting to hear, no. They want to hear our city, we want to have local control. That's why we voted for people like you. That's why we've elected our local officials, because we want them to help us with our towns.
But I think the biggest thing you have to do is encourage them to get educated.
Thank you, and I appreciate that you came down and participated. I really do. And the thing is that don't go in guns a-blazing to your city council and planning commission or whatever and assume that these people know what's going on. They don't. Most of them have no idea. They're part-time positions. The staffers are running the things. They're being indoctrinated in the whole sustainable, this is all a machine led to, leading us down a path. And I'm not saying these are bad people, but we need to take the time to say, hey, connect the dots. Here's what's happening. Here's the big picture. We're concerned about this. Have coffee with them. It's very effective. And, go over. It is, it's a lot easier than, yelling at them at a planning meeting. You can do that too, but, but it does help, and then hopefully we can get good people like this who really care about their communities and can stand up and have the guts to say no to some of this money, because I know it's difficult. It really is. I don't have an answer to. We're far down this path, but But we need to stop this regionalism, because that's the writing is on the wall, and they are calling for the dissolving of city and county boundaries. Everything is heading towards regionalism. So that to me is very scary, and if the local city council people don't see their positions at risk now, I don't know, it's going to be gone soon.
Yes, I'm Mike Chiramello. I'm a former city councilman in Dixon, and I was at the last council meeting where my city council accepted $500,000 in grant money from OBAG. I explained Agenda 21 to them. I explained the PDA. They've known about this. Agenda 21, it was explained to them when I was on the council. I appreciate my councilman Tom Vogue being down here tonight, and also Jerry Castagnon. But the fact of the matter is, I feel like Cassandra up there. The oracle, the Greek oracle, that was damned by the gods for telling the truth. And damned from then on, cursed that nobody would ever believe them again. You make these points over and over again. Mr. Ackerman, I agree with you. You need to be down there. But these people don't listen. Our mayor, Jack Batchelor, goes behind the citizens' backs. He's the chairman of the STA for this last year. These people, these lowlifes is what I would call them, because that's what they are, aren't concerned about the citizens. They're concerned about getting free money. When I brought this up, taking this $500,000 was wrong, I had one councilman tell me that he didn't believe taking $500,000 was selling his soul. Now, my question to you, because I don't want to just make comments, my question to you is, we've taken this $500,000, and this is the point that I was trying to make to the council. What are going to be the repercussions from taking this $500,000? What do we have to look forward to?
For being a PDA, or for
Yes, for accepting the money for transportation to repay the street. What are they going to demand from us somewhere down the line?
Well, I can tell you nothing is really going to be demanded of you in the short term. You know, this is how it starts. You know, everything's voluntary, everything's going to be okay. But I can tell you that phase 2, phase 3 of One Bay Area, and they're already talking about it because they floated the VMT, the vehicle mile travel tax, the 10% per mile tax, and everybody went up in arms, and that suddenly went away. I can tell you a lot of their triggers. Pricing, parking rates are going to go up. Parking spaces are going to go down. They want to have employers charge their own employees for parking. They want to ban PDA. They want to ban cars in all PDAs. So if you have a priority development area, they've actually held meetings at MTC and ABAG about banning cars within PDAs. And so that's where this is headed. I mean, there's a whole bunch of regulations and things that are coming down the pike, but the development is there. This is all about big development. Large nonprofit developers are pushing this because they don't care whether it's horizontal or vertical, but the vertical is being subsidized, heavily subsidized. They're getting bonuses for higher densities, lower incomes, waivers for CEQA. I mean, it's all designed to create massive development in these areas and a control grid. Okay.
Thank you. Heather, I want to comment. Thank you so much for your town hall meetings, and I think maybe we can make a shadow government on the other side that can work back against them. When you talk about the things that are to come, I think people also need to look at Agenda 21. What I see coming is that a lot of these land trusts that we're making in Yolo County are going to be turned over into this situation, and people who thought that they were saving their farmland are going to find that it's all going to be turned for wildlife or something like that. The ultimate goal with Agenda 21 is complete control and eradication of private property. You need to read up on Agenda 21. Tom DeWeese has really put this all together. It's easy to find. I thank you for putting up the Citizens Town Hall meetings. I'm sending them, I'm forwarding your website to people in Iowa, people in North Carolina. This is just the beginning. and it's like being swallowed slowly by an anaconda, one gulp at a time.
Did you have a question?
Yes, well, my main question was, can we possibly have money that we, in our towns, that we make our own local taxes, and just that the money can't go anywhere else, it just has to be in our local township. And we may be able to find grant money that will help us do that. And that's what I think might be a way of fighting back.
Once you take the money, it's difficult to stop. But I can tell you that this isn't happening in Atherton. It's not happening in Woodside. So, and those people don't need the money. They're not taking the money. They're not part of ABAG. So, you know, we need to stop the regionalism, okay? That's the whole point. We've created too many boards, bodies, and commissions. And the whole idea behind that is we're being sold on we need to do that in order to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse, and we need to create regionalism so we can scale up and all this stuff. And it sounds good. We need to share resources, etc. What we aren't realizing is once you create all those regional boards, bodies, and commissions, and then you start funding them all and giving them a lot of power, they then now take control. And so the cities and the local city council people and whomever, you know, want to get on those boards, bodies, and commissions because that's where the money is. That's where the decisions are being made. So, I mean, I guess we need to get rid of, you know, it's very difficult to untangle it, but we have to stop taking the money, and we have to, I think we need to start by chopping off ABAG. We need to get out of ABAG, abolish ABAG. I'm trying to get my city to follow Corte Madera's lead, get out of ABAG. It's a voluntary organization, and I hope that you will get your cities out of ABAG too. We don't need them dictating our lives. If we voluntarily, you can't fight regionalism by joining the regionalists. Yes, sir.
I have more of a statement. I'm Brian DeCesare, Sergeant in Northern California State Militia. And I'd just like to say that there's a book, Rosa Corey, Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21, which explains what the end game of this all is, and you'll be stunned. I know that they know, they're you know, downplaying, you know, but I'd just like to say that they're basically trying to control everything, put everybody into little boxes so that they can control everything. Like with your smart meters listen to everything in your house. Everything that is smart in your house is listening to you. Your cable box, your TV.
Okay, we have to wrap it up. That's okay. I'll take one more question, and then we'll be here after to take questions. Go ahead. You're the last one.
Trying to connect to a bigger dot. Is this the kind of things you're talking about? Driving that proposed high-speed train from Fresno to Bakersfield, is that the same sort of idea?
Well, you have to wonder why we have our federal government forcing us to build high-speed rail. Well, it's not actually rated for high-speed rail, but build it in the middle of nowhere. It makes absolutely no sense to build the high-speed rail, even if you want high-speed rail, out between Bakersfield and Fresno, okay? It's an orphan train. It's barely any ridership there. Less than 3% of the population currently uses mass transit, and now we're going to spend, I think it's up to $200 billion putting a train out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that's the joke. Well, they turned off the wall. Why wouldn't they put the train as an extension, create an extension to the major lines already, where it's needed and immediate ridership would make sense, like extending the San Francisco rail or from LA, you know, on. But that makes too much sense, and plus they would have to eminent domain. Think of all the houses, thousands and thousands of homes and properties. They would have to eminent domain in order to get that done. The fact is there would be such a horrendous fight that would not happen, and so it's easier to turn off the water on the Central Valley, the farmers in the Central Valley, and wait them out, get their private property rights, and create a right of way through the path of least resistance. Because that money that's being spent on that high-speed rail, it's not rated high-speed rail. It doesn't include the train. It's not an electrified track. And so it's simply about taking that land so that they can create the right-of-way, and then they can finish the entire rail system. Thank you very much. I'll be here after. We can talk more. Thank you.